All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another video with Mr. Kenton. We're going to be continuing our discussion about types of bonding. Last video we looked at ionic bonding, and today we're going to look at what's called covalent bonding, how that forms, and what exactly is going on there. And so thank you for joining me, and let's go ahead and dive right in here. So if you think back to last time, we talked about ionic bonds where you had a metal and a non-metal that were bonding. And so certainly we're going to want to identify what elements are going to be involved there. But first, let's define what's a covalent bond. A covalent bond is a bond that's formed by sharing electrons between two non-metals, right? So if you think back even when we first introduced this unit, we talked about how chemical bonding takes place in one of two methods, either a transfer of electrons or a sharing of electrons. And so in this particular case, we've got a sharing of electrons between two elements, and specifically between two nonmetals. That's really important, right? So here, when we're dealing with covalent compounds, it's important to recognize that it's going to be two nonmetals, right? So the two elements you see that are involved in the bond are going to be typically found on the right-hand side of the periodic table. Now, just for reference, this occurs between atoms that tend to have similar ionization energies and electron affinities. All that really means, ladies and gentlemen, is that for elements that tend to want to gain electrons are the atoms that tend to share electrons, okay? Now, again, just like with our ionic substances and with bonding, we're dealing with valence electrons. And so the electrons that are being shared are in that outermost energy level. You think with the Bohr model, we're talking about the outermost energy level. And so the electrons are being shared with both atoms at the same time. And even if you start to break down the word, right? So like co, we see that in a lot of other places. Co means jointly or together, right? And then valent, another way for talking about valence or outermost electrons. And so covalent bonding has to do with the joining together of outermost electrons. That's simply what a covalent bond is, right? Now let's talk about the process by which that could happen, and let's look at it from the perspective of looking at Lewis dot diagrams to show what's going on here. Now, for example, if we have two chlorine atoms, so chlorine element Cl has 7 valence electrons. Well, when we look at chlorine, we know that it needs one additional electron in order to get to 8. What we also notice is that each of those chlorine atoms have one spot right here and right here respectively where they're missing a pair. And so what happens when a covalent bond forms is that where you have those lone pairs, where there's opportunities or those lone electrons that are missing a pair, what's going to happen is they're going to try to find another element that can help match up their pair. Now, because chlorine is the same atom here and they're interacting with each other, they simply come together and they share these two lone electrons that they have. And it's as if they both now have 8 valence electrons, right? And so that's how a covalent bond is going to be formed. They're going to share those electrons rather than transferring them so that both elements at the same time have their octet rule satisfied, right? So that's what we see for Cl2. And then let's even take a look at a different example with hydrogen, right? So hydrogen, I want to look at this one because hydrogen's on the left-hand side of the periodic table. It's in group 1, but we got to remember that hydrogen's a non-metal. And so, again, we run into this situation where hydrogen has 1, this hydrogen has 1. They're not paired up. And so what's going to happen, they're going to come together, they're going to bond, their 2 electrons are going to form a pair, and they're going to share the pair between the 2 of them. Now, something that's important to note here, we've been talking a lot about getting to 8, having an octet. Well, hydrogen, helium, and a couple of other atoms, they're okay with just simply having 2 valence electrons. Because on the first energy level, you can only hold 2 electrons to begin with. Okay? And so when they bond together, you get a hydrogen molecule, H2. Now, that's really all we need to talk about in terms of how a covalent bond forms. That's what's really going on at the atomic level. So thank you so much for joining me here. Hope this video was insightful. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to bring them up in class. And I look forward to seeing you guys again soon. Take care.